Welcome to Two Souls Podcast, a podcast to shift, impact, empower, and disrupt your consciousness, ultimately allowing you to thrive in this human experience. Now here are your hosts, Amber Megenhauser and Angela Blaha. Welcome everyone to Two Souls Podcast. Thank you for joining us today. We are super excited because we have an amazing topic to talk about. Hey, Amber, how are you today?
I am fantastic. How about you?
Great. All right. We get to talk about something that we are super passionate about, I think. Yeah?
Yes. Today we are going to talk about vision boards. How can they help us manifest the things that we want, dream, and desire?
Well, because the vision becomes a reality as soon as you put it onto a board or paper. I mean, we talk about,
Yes,
right?
it does.
We talk about this a lot, our visions, our desires, our wants. And I constantly am saying, well, just journal about that, because as soon as you put it onto paper, instead of holding it in your head or in your mind or in your emotions, it becomes a reality. Because now you've literally either spoken it in writing, right? Or if you're creating a vision board, you put it in pictures, which is another way to speak about things. And so yeah, it becomes the reality. Where
And
things
actually
become a little.
visualizing that every day.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Well, where it becomes a little bit tricky is the time frame. Because we happen to, when we get a vision or we get a desire, we think it's always in the future, right? But pulling it into this moment,
Yep.
into the immediate right now, that's where we sometimes need practice doing that, or we need to change our belief systems around that, or we actually don't believe that we can like have something right this second, because we get caught up in, well, how am I going to afford to do that, or how's that going to work, or how much money do I have to make in order for me to get this or that or the other thing, right? When instead, if you stop doing that, because you're creating blocks in your future timeline. If you stop doing that and you just pulled it into right now and you said, you know what, I don't care about the house. This is what I want. This is what I desire. I know that this is going to be my future. And you start believing in that, then it happens like automatically.
I completely agree with you. This is something that I really struggled with for a long time, and I think we all do, is we all get so caught up in the house. We all have these amazing ideas that come in, but your mind can't help, but it just can't even wrap it. You can't wrap your whole mind around, how am I going to make this work? So many people get caught up in them house, which you're right. They completely block everything from coming in when you try to figure out how you are going to do it. If you just let it come in, it all completely works itself out. That how just trips everybody up every time.
Yeah. But, it's really hard to let go of the how, because we're trained to, if we set goals, right? And like setting goals is creating the how, because then you reverse, even if so here's what I suggest. Get the vision, have the vision, put your desires, your dreams, your wants, like everything onto paper, and then reverse engineer it so that you don't actually have to come up with the hows. It just automatically gets created if you reverse engineer it. So let's say you have a big picture of, I remember when I did a vision board of a boat that I wanted, and I wanted a cabin cruiser, and it needed to be like, I think 40 feet or bigger. It needed to have at least one bedroom, one bathroom, so that, sleeping quarters, because I love going upriver and putting the anchor out and just spending the night on the water is probably some of the most peaceful, most magical experiences I've ever had. But I had a cabin cruiser, but I wanted a bigger one because we needed more room for people. And I remember putting it on my vision board, and I remember when I put it on the vision board, it was like, wow, I don't know how I'm ever going to get this boat. Well, within a 6-month period, I had that boat. I had the exact boat because I didn't actually think about it. I looked at the vision board and I would dream. I would dream of me like being on the water and being in that very peaceful state and looking at the stars and just, wondering what else there is to life. And that's what I focused on. And within 6 months, that boat became available. And the funny thing about it is that boat waited for us because it was potentially sold. And then the guy who was selling the boats called back 2 months later and said, "Well, that deal fell through. The boat is here and it's cheaper." Because we had a set dollar amount, we had talked
Wow.
about that. Yeah, right? And so we flew down to California, looked at the boat, and it was like, yes, this is it. This is the one we want. It meets all the criteria that we had. Um, and it was less expensive than what cost more was getting it to South Dakota than it was the boat. But that's where we get um, that's where we get goofed up. We have a tendency to try to make it work or how to figure it out. When if we would just leave that, let that go, and never think about it again, it would never. That's not the problem. We create those blocks when we try to figure things out.
So it's not about figuring out the how, it's literally visualizing yourself, seeing yourself with whatever you are trying to bring into your life.
Right. Yeah. And then not putting a time frame on it. Like I didn't have a time frame. It was just I spent I don't want to say a lot of time dreaming, but I spent every single day I spent time, like 5-10 minutes like being in that dang boat and knowing exactly all the criteria that I wanted. And I wasn't willing to remove any of those standards or to bend any of those standards in order to get a lesser boat or something like that. It had to be this or better. Again, those bending those standards that we do that all the time because we're trying to always figure out the how. And when we figure out the how, we bend our standards.
Yeah, I guess I never realized that till you just spoke that, but absolutely. When you try to figure out the how, you totally change your standards.
Yeah. Why would we do that to ourselves? It's just creating harm to
Yeah.
ourselves. We've talked about standards before and how important they are, but moving into 2022, having a vision of who you are and what you want and creating those standards to obtain those or to fulfill that is extremely important. The energy has shifted. It shifted with these last eclipses, and it's going to shift moving forward again. Like January, February, it's going to shift again. And so creating those standards and not allowing yourself to bend them or to change them. You can change them for something more, but don't change them for something less. See, we're trying to move out of that energy of less, the energy of lack, which is where humanity has been for, over 2,000 years. And when you are trying to move out of that kind of energy of lack, you have to set those boundaries or those standards and you have to stick to them. Now, you can always set a standard for more for something, that you want, dream, and desire that's an even bigger expansion or a bigger picture of where you've been. But for Pete's sakes, never go backwards. We cannot go backwards. Right now, as we look at humanity, we're wobbling, right? Like One day it's this, and then the next day it's something else. But we're wobbling between those lacking standards. When you're creating your
Yeah.
vision for 2022 or for your life, you have to set these standards, and you should not, well, you cannot go back into, you cannot wobble with them, and you cannot go back into a lacking or a lesser standard than what you are right now. There's no expansion in that. There's no evolution.
Yeah, and as you're just saying that, it's like all the vision boards I've done in the past were like going through my head, and that's exactly why vision boards don't. Weren't some people are not successful for with them is
Mm-hmm.
because instead of we might like your boat for example, if you would have downgraded your standards, then you you would have never got what you wanted, and it's like it completely blocks you. And when you were talking about that, it's like I could picture these vision boards that I've done in the past and why they failed for me because I always settled for less. I definitely
Mm-hmm.
downgraded my standards instead of upgrading them. So that is a very, very good point. Why do we settle for less instead of increasing our standards sometime?
Well, we're used to settling. I mean, if you look throughout your
Yeah.
entire life, how many times have you settled instead of saying, no, I want this? No, I
Yeah.
want, no, I won't conform to society's rules. No, I'm not going to do it. We don't do that. We get peer pressured, or we get, pressured by whatever it is, whatever's pressuring us. And then we bend, we break. I mean, we are well conditioned to bend our standards, to not even have standards, which is kind of where we are right now as a human race. Like, we don't have too many standards. If you look at our lives and the
Yeah.
people, we don't have very many standards. There's no morals, you know? And when you have these personal morals, these personal, like, boundaries within yourself, your life gets better and better and better. The more money you acquire, the more friends you have, the better relationships, like personal relationships with your family, with your children, with your partners. Like, all of that becomes like miracles. And
Yes.
right? Like, that's
Yeah.
where, that's what you want. You want to be in that kind of energy. Well, how do you get there? It's not by creating to-do lists.
No, definitely not.
No. And I think that some people look at vision boards as a to-do list. Like, well, I'm going to check this box off of
Yeah.
my bucket list. Well, that's fantastic, and you can do those kinds of things, but you need to have the standard of what's on the bucket list in the first place. Is it really something that you like, that you really want to do, or is it something that somebody else did and you're like, oh yeah, that'd be really cool to do? No.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we do that. Like society teaches us to um compete with one another, so to say. And um I
Hmm.
think that sometimes the things that we do put on our vision boards is not our own vision, it is somebody else's. And if you are forcing somebody else's vision on your board, it's never going to happen for you because you don't have that vision for it.
Exactly. Well, you don't have the passion or the drive behind it. It was like the
Mhm.
boat. Like, if I didn't have the passion or the drive or the ability to see myself like in that boat, it would have never happened. So when we're creating
Yeah.
these vision boards, yeah, having a brand new house is really nice and fun and cool, but you have to pick out everything in your new house. You have to be, like, really, like, I want to be on this land. Like, when we built this house that we're in right now, which was about a year ago, um, it was the land that was calling. The house was just, you know, like, it got created. The house literally got, my daughter and I did a plan in about 2 hours for the house. But it was the land. And the land, again, waited for me. Like someone else had purchased this. The first time that I had looked at this land was probably about 4 years ago. And I was really hesitant because it was just covered with trees and, but the land was, and someone else purchased it. And then 2 years later, or a year and a half later, it comes up for sale. And I'm like, okay, I want that land. Like the land waits for you, just like that boat waited for me. Right. And
Yeah.
so when
Yeah.
these things are so aligned and you're like, man, you're just so drawn to them. Like the land here is where I'm at right now. It's like totally
Phenomenal.
magical. Yes. Yeah, it's phenomenal. I mean, you can't even
Yes.
put words to it really. And
No, you
it's really
can't.
that pull and that desire of whatever it is that you think you have a desire for, like there has to be a passion behind it. Just having
Yes.
a new car, and if you don't have passion behind it, it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
We have to start looking at life this way. I feel like, where's the passion? And I teach this all the time. Like, where is the passion? We can have a desire for, I don't know, for anything, right? You can have a desire for a new partner or a different partner or something. But if you don't have passion behind it for like a romantic, like this was always me when I was a kid. I was always considered to be a hopeless romantic because for me, I believe that love is just this, there's a purity to it, right? And there's like, you don't ever have to work at it. And it's always magical. And it's always like these dreamy Disney movies. Like, I believe love stories should be just like those. Like, why not? Or even better than those, right?
Yeah.
Like, why not? Why not? Why don't we have
Yes.
that standard? Why don't we have that standard for ourselves?
You know, that is a very good question. I used to beat myself up about this question a lot in my past. And I think we just do what we know. Instead of wanting more for yourself, like I look at my past relationships and they worked, and
Mm-hmm.
it was like something you did every day. It wasn't, I didn't have that passion like you spoke about with like a love relationship. And I think that's why I've been single for so long now, is because I like actually I know what that looks like now, and like I'm so stable in myself and care about myself so much that I'm just like, unless I have like that pure connection with somebody, I just like disregard it. So I think people seek attention from others rather than looking for that pure love.
Well, and I don't think uh, well, growing up, my mother always told me love isn't like that. That's not how love is. You have to work at it. You have to, like, a marriage is, you have to work at a marriage. I had this thought in my mind, like, why? Why would you have to work at anything? This is earth, for God's sakes. You should be able to do anything here on earth, not knowing who I was at that time. And I was
Yeah.
like, no, these are just lies that you're telling yourselves. You shouldn't have to work at anything. There's infinite possibilities in earth, infinite possibilities on earth. And when we don't have these standards, or if we have these belief systems that say, like my mother, marriage is work, her marriage was work. I mean, they were constantly bickering about something,
Yep.
and you don't, that's not, she didn't have a standard about it. She did not have a standard that love should
Yeah.
just be this fluid relationship and, conversations galore if that's really what you want, or, sexual encounters galore if that's really what you want. But we should not have to, she didn't have a standard. And then when she kept trying to tell me that I should, change my standard, I was like, no, not doing that. I'm not doing that. Love should just be this fluid,
You
and it has the ability to change. Love should have the ability to change in my mind.
Yeah,
Because as you grow older
totally
with a
agree.
person, or if you grow into a relationship or out of a relationship, it should have the ability to change without having anger or rage or resentments, you know?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Not having a standard or having a standard of work, that just
Yeah.
how we view things, how we view things can make or break anything in your life. Exactly, that's a perfect example where you can either look at love as work or a marriage as work, or you can look at it as pure love and absolute bliss. It's all about our perception and like how we view things, how like this whole vision board, it's all about what you vision in your head. If you envision your marriage as work, man, it's going to be nonstop work and hell. Like nobody wants to have
Hmm.
that kind of a marriage. But if you vision your marriage as pure love and bliss, that's exactly the type of marriage you're going to have.
Yeah,
It's
well,
all about the vision.
yeah. Well, I'm an Aquarian, so we have a lot of eclectic kind of things in our lives anyway. But the
We
the
do.
whole we do. But it's the whole, like, you need to have a vision of who you are and what your desires are here on earth, because the infinite possibilities are complete distractors. And we have a gazillion distractors, but we don't really focus and narrow or even try to narrow our focus so that we can literally manifest what we want. That's part of the problem with manifesting or vision boards or whatever, is we don't have the ability to narrow our focus. Like, I've done vision board classes in the past, and by the way, we're having one in January, so if you're interested in that, please reach out to us. We will do in person
Yes.
and online, so let's just make that clear. um,
Yes, super
but if
excited about that.
Yes, if we don't have a vision of, like, or we're really reluctant, and I went through this myself. Like, we're really reluctant to narrow our focus, because we think that then the possibilities, the creativity doesn't flow. But actually, that's when it flows the most. That's when it flows the best. And you
Hmm.
can pull in a timeline when you're super focused versus having 20 things in the iron, or 20 things going all at one time, and versus somebody who has one or two things going all the time. Like, they can create their goals, get created much at a much quicker pace because they're focused.
So that was actually what a vision board is 100% about too, is
Hmm.
being super focused on what you actually want. You can't just paste a bunch of pictures on there and think all your dreams are going to come true. That is not how it works. You
No.
have to be focused on what you want to bring it into your life.
Right.
And if
Hmm.
like, it's also focus the way you focus. If you, let's say, let's just say a new house. If you wanted a new home, whether you're going to build one, whether you're going to buy one, whatever it is, if you are put a picture of a house on your vision board, um, that doesn't mean you're necessarily going to get the house that you want. You might get the house of your dreams because you manifested that. Or if you think that you're second guessing everything of it and you create all the doubt with it and you're just not really sure what it looks like, you might get the house that you absolutely do not want. So you have to be careful about how you honestly focus too, because you can bring in the things that you don't want just as fast as you can bring in the things that you do want.
Totally. I mean, that's the truth. And I think that we focus on what we don't want way more often than what we do want.
I think that's where a lot of people actually trip up with trying to live this type of a lifestyle, you can manifest everything you want into your life, but you have to be super focused on it, because you can definitely bring in the things that you don't want, because that's what society teaches us. When you have something in your life that is not going the way you want it to go, and if you keep focusing and focusing and focusing on it, guess what? It just keeps going the way you don't want it to go. But if you change the way
Mhm.
you think about things, you can take a different road and make it go down the path you want it to go. So every
Mhm.
bit of it is about your focus. You can't think in your head like, oh, I'm going to have this brand new house, but what if there's a crack in the wall? So then now the house that you got, all the walls have cracks in Omar. That's just like a really simple example, but it kind of tells a point on, you have to pay attention to what you are focusing on, because you don't want to bring
Yes.
in the things in your life that you don't want.
Yes. For sure. For sure. So, creating a vision for 2022 with this tiger water energy, it's a very powerful energy, but it can also seeing the vision, right? Seeing that big picture and how will you nourish it? Um, like what's nourishing the vision? Are you nourishing the vision or is someone else nourishing the vision? We can manifest through other people if we're kind of these projector kind of people. We can totally manifest through other people. But when you have this passion behind you, then it ultimately it's a standard of the universe. The universe has standards. How come humanity doesn't have standards,
Absolutely.
right? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's fun.
So when people are creating a vision board, is it, how far out do you project what you want to come into you? Do you go like just within the next year? Is it good to do a vision board 5 years out? What is a great time frame for a vision board? I know we're not supposed to put time on this, but like, how big do you make your vision board?
As big as you want. Like, why should we limit, right? Like, there should be
Okay.
no limit. I mean, that should be one of our
Yeah.
standards, right? If we have a desire,
Yeah.
why wouldn't you put it on the board? I mean, anything.
Yeah.
Like, there was a time when I had probably 8, maybe 10 things on my vision board that I really had passion about. And within the year, everything on that, I mean, it was a done deal. The problem, I think, is that we have a tendency not to dream big enough versus too much.
Mm,
If
yeah.
you're creating a vision board and all of your everything on that vision board is created within 3 months to 6 months, you're not dreaming big enough. Like when I had
Yeah.
all 8 of those things fulfilled within a year, I wasn't dreaming big enough. I was still in lack mentality that I couldn't have the ultimate, you know. So I say when you start to look at a vision board or what your biggest dreams and desires are, start asking yourself, what kind of a legacy do you want to leave behind? We don't focus on our
I
legacies. Like
think that
how will you be remembered?
I was just going to say that. I don't think anybody actually looks at that.
Well, we're not trained to look at that. We're trained to be like, yes, in the present moment is super, super important, but also like, how do you create the present moment if you don't know what you want to have as your legacy? So,
Yeah.
having that balance of the present moment and the future is super important, but we have a tendency to look at the past versus the future because a good portion of us are afraid of the future. If you actually were to fulfill your legacy, could you imagine who you'd be in the present moment? Every moment?
Man, you can just feel how powerful that shift is just speaking them words.
Right? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
So if you're going to create a vision board this year, or if you're going to, set goals for yourself or whatever, however you work, be sure to include your legacy.
absolutely.
Mhm.
I love that. We want to thank everyone for joining us today. Be on the lookout for our amazing vision board journey that is coming up. It is going to be fabulous. If you have any questions for Angela or I, please feel free to reach out to one of us. Until next time, from our soul to yours, have a super fantastic day.